to record. And on that note, I am going to welcome everybody to a shorter episode of the Performance Education and Discussion Podcast. It's just me and David right now. Jake might pop in. I don't know. We haven't heard from him. So he might be out walking the dogs or might be training
it is
or
peak
something.
week for him. So it's one of those things where he's doing his thing.
Yep. His priority is feeling good going into his competition this Saturday, and everything else, like a stupid little podcast, that's pretty much secondary. But Dave, I'm starting this off because I was told to do this because not everyone makes it to the end, and we're supposed to. I've had multiple people be like, you should promote yourselves more. So David Herrera does consultation calls for everything we're talking about on here. Hit him up for all of your needs. Dave, plug yourself along with the new website.
Yes. So there will be a coaching website shortly. I'm working with Dev as well. So that will be happening in the near future. But for right now, the only way that you can get a hold of me is on DMs on Instagram or on Facebook, or shortly, like even more shortly, like here this coming next week, hopefully, there will be a website called darylstrength.com, which is where you can go and purchase my product, KO Ken. Along there is a contact me, like on every website, where you can actually email, and I will be the guy receiving that email. So you can even email me through there. Yep.
That's so yeah, just like quick plugs. And basically with me, because like this is where we'd insert sponsors, but this is our podcast, so we're the fucking sponsors. So my website, the AOD Collective, you guys can sign up for my coaching, my consult calls, all my shit there. Instagram DMs are always open. You know where to find me. All that stuff. If you support the podcast, support the stuff we're doing, buy some stuff from us, because it makes it easier for us to continue to do this and provide the information we're providing. Jake is JKB_43 on Instagram, I think.
Yes.
If I'm
yes.
Yeah. So, yep. So hit him up too. But that's his plug. So we're going to lead into this episode basically just because Jake's not here and because David and I have like a multitude of questions to cover, but this is a interesting one to cover. And we talked about it briefly before starting the recording, but it's going to be really, really nice to bridge into after Jake's competition this Saturday when we actually record together. I got a question on my members only website. Somebody asked, at some point, I'd like to hear your guys' take on coaching enhanced versus natural athletes. Do you program differently? Why or why not? And how important is it that your coach knows that you're on PEDs, or does it not really matter?
So I'm going to answer that last one first, because most people are probably going to say it matters a lot. And this is what I'm going to say. If he's a good coach, it's not going to matter. Yep. Because he's going to figure out that you're recovering exponentially better than he thought, and he will adjust the programming to match. If he's a shitty coach, he thinks that you're not taking anything, it will take him forever to figure that out, and you're essentially going to be outrunning the program. So would I say that you need to tell your coach and you should tell your coach? Absolutely. But the coach will find out on his own very, very quickly if you are on and he thinks that you're not, because he's going to quickly find out that you are either exceptionally genetically blessed or something is up because it's not progressing right.
Yep. And that's exactly what I was going to say. Like, basically my answer was going to be a big fat, it depends, because exactly that. If the coach knows what's going on, knows what he's doing, and is actually being a coach to the athlete, not just writing a program, not just like filling out a spreadsheet, right. Actually seeing like, okay, this triple at 95% of your max still moved really easy. It's like, fuck, all right. Like, you're responding really well to the training or the drugs I don't know that you're on. You're going to be able to figure it out relatively quickly. And it's one of those things, like, if you want to get everything you can out of your training, Absolutely tell your coach. That should be a conversation that you guys have, because even if the coach is not comfortable prescribing or like giving recommendations on the stuff, if they're a good coach, they're going to know to refer you to individuals to figure that stuff out, or may be able to provide like anecdotal experience or evidence or something.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, and absolutely making that point of like, just because you tell your coach doesn't mean that he is there to help you with your drugs. Like, the people got to distinguish that. Like, if you hired a coach to help you with your training, and that's what you're paying him for, and you tell him, oh, by the way, I take, PEDs, that coach is not at all, or should not at all, be held responsible with, okay, well, now I got to learn about PEDs. That coach may not want to learn about PEDs. He just may be an exceptional coach with training, and he'll just be like, just like I mentioned, okay, if he's a good coach, he's going to be like, okay, cool, you're on PEDs. I'm just going to adjust my training to match your recovery that should be better than normal.
Absolutely. Yep. That's exactly it. And kind of on that point, it leads into, at least I think, the part of the question where it's like actually programming differently for enhanced versus natural individuals. This is why I was going to say kind of it depends, because it's not, it depends on what compounds they're taking. Well, it does, but the biggest reason that it's dependent on on some other variable is due to the individual. Because I and David and any other coach worth their salt, I would say, is most likely going to program differently for each individual. That's because each individual is going to recover differently, is going to respond differently, is going to be a different person than the person doing this program. Same thought process applies to a natural individual versus an enhanced individual. When I went from being natural to enhanced, I could handle more, I could recover better, but that was based on me. That was based on my baseline, my individual baseline. That baseline from David, when he went from natural to enhanced, he could be different. If he started as a natural athlete, able to handle an incredibly higher amount of volume or a higher level of intensity of training than myself, adding the PEDs would enhance that to an even higher level. So if the coach has like this basic template they start everybody with, they're going to give that to them, and they would have to modify it to me as an individual, and they would have to modify it to David as an individual differently, just based on who we are. But then add in PEDs, they would have to modify it even further.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So essentially, you're just giving a leg up to your coach to start the modification process sooner and probably more aggressively than he would have if he was thinking that you were not taking anything. Definitely. Just a quick example, when because I have natural athletes as well. When I modify their week-to-week progress, I'm using smaller percentages, and volume escalation is almost stagnant for a powerlifter. For bodybuilding, it's almost the opposite. Intensity escalation is kept stagnant, and volume escalation is kept is what's increased, but at smaller percentages in both of those scenarios versus somebody who is clearly enhanced. My jumps in week-to-week progress, whether it's intensity or volume, are just bigger percentages, and sometimes more aggressive on purpose, with the effort to find that ceiling, so that then we can trim it back and be like, okay, what are you taking? If they're a man, what are you taking? What's your dosage? This is where we ran into a roadblock. Let's see, can you add more? Do we have room biologically to add more, or add a different compound? And then we can go even higher if we need to with the training. But with a natural, you're limited to what that is. You can't just modify it. So at that point, you're trimming back and trying to catch that sweet zone to ride that wave month after month. Whereas in enhanced, you can essentially turn the governor on or off, or dial it up a little bit if you know what you're doing on the PED side of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of that's exactly how I run it as well, because when you have a natural athlete, like they're the same the same types of progression may occur, but the rate of progression is almost definitely going to be different if like it was person A natural versus person A enhanced. They're just going to be able to push harder, add more weight to the bar sooner, as like along as technique is pristine, as long as that is kept the same. And it's just like it's adding an enhancement. Your training, the effect of training is going to be enhanced. So you're going to be able to go do more faster.
Absolutely.
And as a natural individual, it's just scaled back a little bit. And like you said, finding that ceiling with untested individuals, there's going to, for me at least, I've found there's either a higher likelihood of like higher percentage work, so like higher intensity in relation to your 1 rep max work or previous 1 rep max work, or there's going to be RPE work. Because if I'm working with someone and we add in like something that's very like either like aggression heavy or like just very androgenic, very responsible for just like strength, volition. So it's like intensity, as most people think about intensity, where it's that like focus, that like amplified drive, volition, as you said. Then I might give somebody like, hey, RP, not like we've been accumulating stress and volume and work for a while. We're kind of leading into a strength block. Let's fucking see it. RPE 9 triple, RPE 9.5 triple. Like go fucking hit some shit. Like see where that line is. That's when I would apply stuff like that. So that's a little bit more freedom for the untested individual, not freedom, but a little bit more like letting go of the reins, just to see how hard the pull's going to be.
Yeah. And what you mentioned there with freedom, that it gives you more freedom. So another example, natural versus untested, which is clearly different to me, is in a powerlifting peak, you're going to dial back volume as you increase intensity. Okay. Well, we know that dialing back volume to increase intensity is a recovery aspect. We're trying to make room for recovery for these heavier weights, so we take a little bit away from the volume. Okay, that's not strange to anybody. Here's the thing: with a natural person, you still have to have enough volume in there to keep enough glycogen filling those muscles and keep their same circumference area, their same cross-sectional area for their muscles, or else they start to change too much and now their movement is a little bit off, their groove, when in a squat in particular or a bench press in particular. Well, with a enhanced athlete, I'll tend to use something that's more glycolytically retentive. Maybe we'll add a little bit extra of the whatever growth hormone dosage they're taking, so they get a little bit more retention. Maybe we'll add in a little bit of deca or anadrol, depending on what they respond well to, that fills them out a little bit more. And at the same time, I can lower even more volume because I'm not keeping volume in there to keep their glycogen stores. That's being done by the drugs. And now we can enhance more recovery and push weights heavier by not training very voluminous at all. If any, you can't get away with that with a natural.
Yeah. And so in like practical application sense of that, or like the listeners, like this is kind of think about your average untested lifter versus your average tested lifter, like, or the elite tested lifter versus the elite untested lifter. Like, for example, like me, when I am deep into a peak, there are periods of time where I'll like hit my heavy double, heavy triple, heavy single on whatever movement, and then pretty much that's it for that day. I will go and do accessories, and that's enough because I have these compounds which are forcing glycogen into the muscle, forcing intracellular water into the muscle, and basically keeping me full and muscular, and keeping the cross-sectional area, keeping the size and volume of the muscle the same, so as not to adjust my groove or my leverages or whatnot. That's because I'm untested. So my peak, my taper is probably going to be a bit harsher. It's going to fall off more. Like there's going to be a more drastic drop in volume. Whereas compare me to Chance Mitchell, I think of him immediately off the top of my head. Because David, do you know who that is?
I know his name, but I don't follow him on
Okay.
Instagram or anything.
Okay. So big, like USAPL competitor, very great lifter. Like
Mhm.
I enjoy watching his lifting. Going into his last meet, I remember seeing exactly this. He's hitting like 5 days out, hitting like a 5x5 and like a 3x6, and like doing these what would be considered like high volume, high total tonnage sessions of main movements. But he's doing that in an effort to not keep the groove greased, like keep the mechanical efficiency there, not because he'll like forget the technique, but because he's most likely limiting his calories slightly going into the meet, and he's might be manipulating water. Pair that with dropping off the total volume too much, he could literally see a detraining effect, because he'll lose his muscularity or just a slight enough of it, because he doesn't have the drugs, nor maybe he doesn't have enough carbohydrates at that point to keep the muscularity, the glycogen, water, intracellular volume of all of his muscles or his torso.
Yeah, and he's probably come up with that, or him and his coach have come up with that through trial and error with other people that are also
Yes.
natural, where it's like, hey, if we drop off volume too early or too aggressively, the lifts start to go to shit. We know it's not a strength problem, so what else can it be? Have they come up with the exact idea that it's cross-sectional area or whatever? No, they've just come up with, if we keep the volume a little bit higher, closer, then we end up avoiding that drop off. And for most people to kind of get an idea, like, we're not talking inches, we're talking millimeters. We're talking millimeters on cross-sectional area, because of the penial angle and how muscles pull on the joints and stuff. You give a muscle a millimeter more fulcrum, now it has different torque. You make that muscle a millimeter smaller, it has different torque. So we're talking millimeters here. And that's why you can, mitigate that with the natural by keeping their volume a little bit higher, or with an enhanced, give them an extra 100 milligrams of something else or 200 milligrams of something else, and you can drop off the volume significantly because it's keeping that extra millimeter or two of tension in that muscle. So just so people are like, well, I don't really see that with my eye. I'm like, it's not something you're going to see unless it's too dramatic. And if you can see it with your eye, you need other help. You've done it all wrong.
Yeah. And that's because that's all that these strength sports are. It's leverages and it's physics. And if you like 1 millimeter from like point A to point B, that's not that big. But if 1 millimeter across an entire quadricep muscle group, then it's like, fuck, that's kind of getting to be a good bit of tissue or a good bit of cross-sectional area. So that's and to continue into the example stuff is like, you can think back to West Side style, like conjugate style training, or like not even going that far, but like, just because it's easier to recall, like most recent example is with Brianni or myself. Like for me, my biggest thing going into, like, I am technically proficient enough that I don't need to continually do the squat, bench, and deadlift to keep my technical proficiency. It's about, and I'm at a level of strength where like it's all about what I can recover from. But so as an untested lifter who has the benefit of keeping that cellular volume and like the muscle fullness is essentially what we're saying, there is a period of time where I'm peaking for my strength, where I will hit 1 week, I will hit a heavy squat, and then the next week I will hit a much lighter squat, or a squat session, have like a lot of workload here and then not a lot of workload on the next week, and then a lot of workload on the following, and then less so on the next. It's waving up and down. But because I am an untested lifter, I get the benefit of like getting just like even more recovery so that I can like push even harder next session. But I'm more likely or less likely to give up that technical proficiency or that groove because of the compounds that I'm on. And that was with Brianni. That was a big thing for her bench, because how often as powerlifters do we hear bench more to bench more? Add in bench frequency in order to bench more. And to a point, yes, that works a lot, because it's such a technically proficient lift, and you have like a lot of people respond well to it. But a lot of people get elbow tendonitis as they go into a meet. And it's hard to be like, okay, well, I've always benched 2 times a week, or I've always benched 3 times a week. If I pull one of these bench days, I'm not going to be as strong. And it's like, okay, maybe, but if you're an untested lifter and we're using things that keep the cellular volume and the muscle fullness, you're not, and as long as you keep technique the same, all that's going to do, if we pull one of your bench days, pull 2 of your bench days even, it's going to let you recover better into the next bench day and potentially avoid some like chronic overuse injuries like the tendonitis we all seem to get.
Yeah.
And if
or then even taking that a step further, you're getting tendonitis. So instead of just eliminating a bench day, you turn that bench day into a pulling movement day where you're still working the upper body, you're still filling it out, you're essentially practicing moving those limbs through a pain-free range of motion and getting blood flow in there, and you treat it as an upper body recovery day instead of a bench session day. Then you come back and bench later the next week, or 5 days later, and now all of a sudden you're like, wow, I'm benching way better again, because you're starting to leverage these compounds to your advantage to emphasize more recovery. Absolutely.
And that's exactly just basically just because it's exactly what we did for Bree. She normally benched 3 days a week, and I was like, trust me, we're gonna want to pull the fucking bench day. And then got to be like 12 weeks out, we pulled the 3rd bench day, added in an accessory, basically like a back and bicep bodybuilder day. And then even at like 4 weeks out, we pulled the 2nd bench day and just added in like just it was a combination not upper lower, but like a push pull accessory day. So she was doing like chest and shoulders and triceps, but also throwing in some back movements.
Right. Yeah.
So that's exactly what we did.
I think that for sure. And again, most people are going to run into some elbow issues like that's very common. And it's because of, in my opinion, too much pushing versus actually pulling and evening out all that structure in the shoulder and pulling the lat and the connecting to your triceps and all of that, how that ties into pulling movements versus pushing movements, and just literally having way too much push volume for your pulling volume, especially when you start peaking. Because most of these people, like I'm the same way, I will start to run into some elbow issues when I start peaking, not when I'm training normally though. Only when I start peaking and I start focusing more on the bench pressing movements and all the pressing movements themselves, it's one of those things where it starts to act up. And then the moment that happens, the very first thing I do is give my bench a break for a week, start focusing on my pull movements, and add in more pulling day, essentially.
Yeah. And that's same here, like same with me. And I would say, like, I agree with you in like pushing versus pulling. Like we put too much emphasis on the push versus the pull and training in that manner. But I don't know. I like a good emphasis is a good word, but I wouldn't so much say like the volume is the key or whatnot. It's the intent. It's like the intention with which we do it, because we put so much effort and so much force into the pushing, but then it gets to you finish the main movements on your workout, and then you have like 4x10 lat pull down, and you're just kind of da 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 da. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, that's one. You want to approach training the backside of your body with the same level. I'm not going to say intensity, because we confuse
I would say the same intent of building it, of building it.
Exactly.
Because, okay, we've all probably been here, especially when we were younger, where we go in and half-ass the gym and we don't see any results. Well, it's no different than when you're training your pulling muscles versus your pushing muscles. If you're half-assing the intent to grow your pulling muscles, well, then that's wasted effort. It's wasted time. You see what I mean? If you're 100% right, it is about the intent. When we practice as powerlifters, we're focusing with a lot of intent to bring up that pushing muscle for bench pressing. And more often than not, you just don't necessarily not do the pulling muscles, but you definitely don't do it with the same intent.
Yep, absolutely. And I mean, you can apply that to anything, because for the longest time, I was like, oh man, like my torso is huge. Like I have big pecs, big lats. I have wide set clavicles. I'm like a big framed individual. So like looking at me, it's like I have big arms, but in comparison to everything else on me, my arms are small. And I would always just kind of be like, fuck, I have small arms. I have small arms, like I train them, but I'm like, I have small arms. So it's like, man, but now, honestly, this past like 2 months or like month and a half or whatever it has been, I've been like, okay, I'm going to be on I'm on like my cruise dose shit, and I'm on like all the ancillaries that are like pushing for growth, and fuck it, like I'm right now I'm healing and getting big, and I'm like, I'm going to train my fucking arms like I want, like I'm going to get fucking giant ass arms. And
Right.
you want to know what I've seen? My
Arms
arms are
growing.
responding. My arms are bigger. Like I'm filling out some more sleeves. Like I wearing another tank top like this yesterday, like just being stoned and cooking in the kitchen, or fucking standing in the kitchen. I don't cook. And Bree looked at me and was like, dude, your arms look fucking huge. And it's like, yeah, I'm actually like, if you watch some of the videos that I upload, I'm actually like not just doing like 4x12 where the 12th rep is like, okay, I'm done. It like starts to burn. So then I stop.
Right.
It's like, it starts to burn, and it's like, okay, we're fucking pushing for goddamn growth. Like, let's fucking go.
It's just like anybody, any good power lifter who's, done I'm going to do 20 reps on the squat, with what, when you get to rep 10 or 12, you're like, fuck, this is going to suck. Yep. But then you keep going, and then eventually you make it. It's one of those things where the payoff just starts when the pain starts to set in. Most people are not going to train what they're neglecting to that level unless they're actually got that intent to go. So yeah, I mean, that kind of wraps up as far as like programming and little tidbits for enhanced versus non-enhanced. I think we gave everybody a pretty decent answer that it does depend, and you should always disclose it if you feel that that's going to help you with what you're paying for. Again, this is all customer service. You're the guy paying for the service. If you want the best service and you feel that your coach should know about this so that he can give you the best service, and I honestly think every coach is wanting to do that, then yeah, you should probably do that. And that will change your training in all the different ways that we discussed.
Yep, 100%. And that's exactly as you said. It's all customer service, and it's like you're not obligated to do it at all. But if you think it's going to impact your training, which you probably do because you're buying shit and injecting yourself with it, then most likely, if it's going to make you better, tell your coach. And if they don't help, like, give you guidance, because if I wasn't giving guidance, I'd still be able to refer people. I'd say, hey, go talk to Dave. Hey, go sign up for Broderick's site. Hey, go do this. Hey, go do that. Like there's a lot of options out there. And if it's going to help you, absolutely do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, for real.
Yeah. So that'll be our quick one. That still wasn't even that quick, but all right. That's that's the short.
30 minutes. It was 30
so
minutes.
That's short for us. Yes. But so that is the third episode of the Performance Education Discussion Podcast. You can find me on theaodcollective.com and my Instagram as per usual. Dave at darylstrength.com.
Darylstrength.com.
It's like it's derelict, right? Like it's spelled like derelict. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. And then my Instagram is David Herrera 1119. That's just my Instagram handle. And then, just going off of last episode where, all rising tide raises all ships, is I want to give a shout out to a couple other people. Last time we talked about Broderick, and his website for people that want to understand more of this type of stuff. Another mentor / person that I have followed is Victor Black. I think you,
yes.
And it's one of those where he's going to be self-learn type of person. So if you're one of those people out there that are listening to this podcast because you're a self-learner and you want to educate yourself more, that's the place you want to go. That's where you want to spend a little bit of your money. It's going to take your effort to learn it. He's not going to spoon feed it to you, but he has a lot of good information. Broderick's about about the same. You're going to have to put in the effort to do that. Nobody's going to spoon feed you this stuff. And then I'll save a couple other people for other podcasts.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll do the same on my end. If you guys ever I've had so many people hit me up on like, okay, what certification do I need? Like, should I get the NSCA, the ISSA, whatever, blah, blah, blah. The best certification course that I ever got is actually going to the Kabuki Movement Prep or the Kabuki Movement Series seminars. They're solid. That's what I base a large majority, not a large majority, but like a really good bit of where I got like the groundwork for my familiarity with like movement and mechanics. That's where I got it from, because Duffin was talking about feet and the abdomen years and years before most anybody was talking about like bracing as how we think about it now and rooting as we think about it now. So can't recommend those guys enough. And on that note, we're signing off for episode 3. The next episode, I believe we are actually going to record in person after Jake Benson's meet this upcoming Saturday on November 13th or 14th or whatever the
13th.
date is.
13th.
Yeah. So until next time, guys, thank you for tuning in. Like and share and do whatever it is that you do on the internet to support us. So appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you.